Okay, part two, discussing the Sasha Riley tapes. First of all, it is true that Virginia Giuffre did testify in a case against Ghislaine Maxwell. A man named Bill or William Riley worked for Jeffrey. It is also true that Bill Riley was called or supposed to be called as a witness in the same legal proceeding. And it is true that the name Bill Riley comes up multiple times throughout the files that we have access to and Jeffrey's emails. Keeping that in mind, it is important to note that there was an attorney who worked for Jeffrey named Bill Riley, who is not the same man as Sasha's adoptive father. Second of all, it is true that Donald Trump did have a primary care doctor who was a gastroenterologist for many, many years, and his name was Dr. Bornstein. And Dr. Bornstein had his office raided during Donald Trump's first term, and shortly after, Dr. Bornstein passed away under very mysterious circumstances. Now, third of all, I want to talk a little bit about the timeline, because I think that's where I personally have some questions. Not saying I don't believe Sasha. I am not trying by any means to be negative or harmful to survivors in any way, shape, or form. All of my questions could probably be answered with clarity given within this timeline. I'm not trying to question the allegations that Sasha is making. I am not putting any of the things that Sasha has alleged past these evil, disgusting men. I just want to make that so clear. So let's talk a little bit of the timeline of it all. The timeline in which Sasha alleges that they were directly impacted by this harm from ages 9 to 13, which was 1978 to 1986. So where was everybody? 1978 to 1981, Jeffrey was working at Bear Stearns for Alan Greenberg. This is where Jeffrey first heard of Robert Maxwell, as Robert Maxwell had an account at Bear Stearns, but he did not meet Robert Maxwell until later. From 1981 to 1987, Jeffrey started his own intelligence firm and was working with clients around the globe. He was doing a lot of work abroad at this time. This is the era where Adnan Khashoggi, the Saudi arms dealer, was one of Jeffrey's clients. This is actually the era where Jeffrey made a lot of the intelligence contacts that he maintained until his passing. In this era, he made connections with defense contractor Douglas Leese, U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, connections with Stephen Hoffenberg, who would go on to introduce him to Robert Maxwell. In 1987, he officially went on to work for Stephen Hoffenberg at Towers Financial Corporation, which later turned out to be one of the largest Ponzi schemes in American history. There's no record of Donald Trump and Jeffrey crossing paths or knowing each other during this time period. What was Jim Jordan doing in this era? And honestly, I could talk about Jim Jordan all day. I think he is a very scummy person, and I think it's very alarming that as an elected official, he went to great lengths to try to downplay the horror of the Ohio State scandal, a school that he was an alumni of. In the 1978 to 1986 timeline, Jim Jordan was in high school for a good portion of that. If I'm not mistaken, Jim Jordan graduated from high school in 1982. And then he graduated from college in Wisconsin in 1986. Then he went on to get his graduate degree at Ohio State in 1987. And I'm not saying that this exonerates anybody. I am just giving you context of where everyone was during this time period. Then there is Andy Biggs. In 1978, Andy Biggs had just returned from his LDS mission and began college at BYU, and he would graduate from BYU in 1982, and then he would graduate with his law degree in 1984. So he was a college student and working his early career as an attorney during this time period, basically. And then there's Jane Goodall. What was Jane Goodall doing during this time period? During this time period and after, Jane Goodall was mostly based in Tanzania, where she spent most of her time enthralled in research and observing the chimpanzee community. Jane Goodall did start a youth advocacy program in 1991, and the first location was based in Tanzania. It wasn't a troubled youth program. It was a youth advocacy program having to do with nature and animals and immersing children and teens into the world of animals and nature. And to my knowledge, I've personally never heard of Jane Goodall doing behavioral work with children. That would be new to me. I'm not saying it did not happen, but I've personally never heard of her dabbling into like the pediatric behavioral care. Then there's Lindsey Graham. During this time period, Lindsey Graham was mostly a college student in South Carolina. He graduated with a psychology degree in 1977 and then received a law degree in 1981. Then Lindsey Graham went on to join the Air Force in 1982, and he was stationed mostly in Europe during his service until he left active duty in 1989. And Vladimir Putin was also mentioned as someone who was aware of this operation running. During this time period, Vladimir Putin was KGB, so I really couldn't tell you what he was doing or where he was, other than the curated information that Russian media will allow us to be aware of. Clarence Thomas was another figure who was mentioned as someone who attended these parties, these festivals. In 1978, Clarence Thomas was working for the state of Missouri after receiving his law degree 4 years prior. From 1979 to 1981, Clarence Thomas worked at the U.S. Department of Education, may she rest in peace, under the Reagan administration. And in 1981, Ronald Reagan appointed him the chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where he served until 1982. Then from 1982 to 1986, Clarence Thomas served as a private attorney to government officials and politicians. So he was absolutely heavily involved in the government during this timeline of allegations. So then we have Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not a politician during this time period, but he could be considered one of like the ultra wealthy elites, and he obviously still is. As we know, Donald Trump's early ideas of entering politics didn't really start happening until after his KGB-sponsored trip to Moscow in 1986. We know he would run for president unsuccessfully in 2000 before later going on to successfully run for president and ruin everybody's life. During the time period of the allegations that Sasha has brought forward, Donald Trump was super involved within the real estate world. He was super involved in his casino world. He was constantly trying to get newsworthy moments for the newspapers. During this time period, Donald Trump was very close, basically attached to the hip to his lawyer and fixer, Roy Cohn. So I share those timelines with you not because I don't believe powerful men or these powerful men did something awful to Sasha. And I'm sure that like the questions I have could be easily cleared up with just some clarification. I think we should all be supporting Sasha's message stating release the files. And I most certainly do not put any of the egregious things that Sasha recalled past any of the men accused. It's very clear Sasha is simply asking to be heard, to be listened to release the files, and I think all of those things should be respected. I definitely think that there's a really big rabbit hole here, and I am very curious to see the further information, the receipts, the audio files that are released. I know that that's the plan, is to release more information, and I will be sitting with bated breath waiting to consume more of it. I know that this is like a really hot topic right now, and a lot of people are talking a lot about it. I just have questions so that I can better understand. Not because I think that Sasha is lying, not because I think that any of the allegations made are so outlandish that none of these men are capable of doing these things. I totally believe that these men are capable of doing the things alleged. This is just one of those stories that I feel I need to take one step at a time and continue to respect the request of what Sasha is asking of us, to hear their story and to push those in power to release the files. So I guess like consider this like our chapter 1 into Sasha, and I hope you guys understand what I'm saying when I say I just kind of want to take this one slow, one step at a time. This is an evolving story. There's still more information to come out, but none of that means that I am not on Sasha's side. So I'll have like more thoughts and opinions and information for you guys as this develops. But that's kind of just like a breakdown in a nutshell for you guys, and just kind of like a timeline of kind of the things that were happening during that time. We're going to keep a close eye on this, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinions and thoughts in the comments.